it's great to be at the University of Florida. I love seeing some of the young people in the audience. Not that there's anything wrong with the older people in the audience, but we're really honored to be here. I want to thank Dean Reed for inviting us to be part of this event, and certainly the College of Journalism, the Levin College of Law, and the Wasdins. It's great to be able to sponsor this kind of event. So I don't know how many of you all know about the Undefeated, but we launched in 2016 at ESPN. We declared ourselves the premier platform exploring the intersections of race, sports, and culture. We've tried to live up to that. I still look at us as a startup, but we've done a lot of events like this. We think that it's really important to engage the audience, to be in live spaces, to build communities, to convene conversations. We've done them at the Super Bowls. We did on the South Side of Chicago with athletes and community leaders, and we brought them together to discuss gun violence. We did it at North Carolina A&T University. We brought the first African American president there. It was the first time a president had visited that HBCU. So we're proud of the things we have done like this, and this is another honor to be here doing this. I've kind of come to, for those of you who don't want to just kind of check out what we do, you can come to theundefeated.com, but I like to also kind of refer to us now as a content studio, for ESPN, and we really, we've done 5 television specials, we've done 4 music videos, we have a children's book that's coming out Christmas Eve called The Fierce 44, Black Americans Who Shook Up the World. And so we try to do a range of things. This year, we have been doing the Year of the Black Quarterback, a series that seems prescient, if not clairvoyant, given the way black quarterbacks have been performing in the NFL this year, including last night when we saw Russell Wilson with incredible drive. And speaking of specials, there's going to be another one in February after the Super Bowl on the Year of the Black Quarterback. So we're proud to be here, and we look forward to this great conversation. I want to give a special shout out to my friend Herb Lowe, who was the first one that contacted me. We've been friends a long time in the College of Journalism, and first started that conversation and let us know about the opportunity. So it's great that you got ambassadors here, and now we have more ambassadors for the University of Florida out in the world.
Amen.
And us. Thank you.
Like Kevin, I want to say a few shout outs, a few thank yous. We are really fortunate to have partners like the College of Law and the College of Journalism and Communication. So Diane, congratulations on getting out of jury duty and being here today. We're glad to have you. Dean Laura Rosenberry, I know, is attending as well. Thank you very much for that. We have some special guests here who I want to acknowledge. In particular, we've got 2 groups of Gainesville High School students who are here, one from Aces in Motion, one's from Gainesville High School itself. I want to welcome those folks to this group. We really are honored to have you on campus. I think it's an example of how your town hall setting has really brought groups together that wouldn't normally. Yeah. I mean, normally our colleges don't spend time together, and we certainly don't spend enough time with people from the community. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I also want to say a special word of thanks before we get going too far. This young lady down here on the front row is Ms. Susie Wasdin, and her husband will be on stage in a few minutes, Tom Wasdin. These folks are alumni of University of Florida. They wanted to do something meaningful, and their vision for this event and their support for this event really made it possible. So Susie and Tom, thank you all very much for that. Now about the program. It's a very lively program. There's a lot going on. You can't believe the talent that's going to be on this stage tonight. The first segment is a conversation between three very interesting individuals. So Nathan Whitaker is a New York Times best-selling author. Thank you. So you got to have a professional. New York Times best-selling author, and he's also a true Gator, and he also happens to live in Gainesville. He kindly agreed to facilitate this conversation between two giants in the basketball industry. As you will know, I'm sure, Artis Gilmore is an icon of the NBA world. He is a Basketball Hall of Fame inductee. He also did his undergraduate work at Jacksonville University, where he played ball for the Jacksonville team in college years. His coach at that time was Coach Tom Wasdin. Coach Tom Wasdin was a very successful NCAA coach. He was there when Artis was there, and he was instrumental in recruiting African-American athletes, including Artis, and working together, that team went on to do amazing things that you will hear about in the upcoming video. I think you'll find it interesting, informative, maybe exciting. So please enjoy.
I'm Nathan Whitaker. It's my pleasure to be here with Artis Gilmore and Tom Wasdin today. We're going to talk about JU basketball. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart as a sixth-generation Floridian, and talk about some of the things that not only they achieved on the court, but then the impact they had off for the city of Jacksonville and beyond for the rest of us. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Where'd you first meet?
Well, I met Artis first at Gardner Webb Community College in Boiling Springs, North Carolina. And I'd heard about him from a friend of his, and I went up to see him play. And I couldn't believe what I saw. And that's the first time. That was in like 1967, I believe.
Tom, actually, he and Joe Williams had an opportunity to come and visit myself and dear friend, colleague, Ernie Fleming. It was in Shelby, North Carolina, which is Boiling Springs, where Gardner Webb was located.
It's been a long time ago, over 50 years ago. Says, "Dear Coach, I'm Ernie Fleming. You tried to recruit me to go to JU back when I was a freshman." And he says, "My grades are good and I'd like to transfer. And I'd like to bring a friend of mine with me." Well, I thought he was a girlfriend or something, at the time. And he says, "P.S. My friend is 7'2" Artis Gilmore.
So the additional friend in a postscript was an 11-time All-Star. It's hard to imagine in this day and age of technology, information, and the like that Artis Gilmore could have slipped through the recruiting cracks. You would think that every program in the country would have been, but I guess it was a different era where a lot of schools weren't interested.
Southern schools, no, they were not accepting black athletes, and a number of them, especially in the South. So in Chipley, we had one stoplight, and the schools were segregated, and it was, and the community itself was really challenging.
For our philosophy, we were not winning very well, and we had a losing season. We wanted to have good players, and it just happened that most of the good players, a lot of them were Afro-American, and nobody else in the South really recruited them very highly. And about that time, then they started integrating the schools. So there were white players and black players playing together. But at that time, we didn't have much competition, really, because nobody else wanted them, and we did, and we wanted them because they're great players.
So talking about the unique makeup of that team, so you've got the Twin Towers far before they ever made it into the NBA, right? It's Artis and Pembroke Williams, both 7-footers. The racial makeup of the team made it unique. And then you guys played, Dean Smith's playing four corners and you guys brought a fun brand of basketball, right?
Joe Williams, who did our scheduling, he scheduled only places, big cities, places are fun, places where our team would get exposed. But we wanted to make it fun. We want to score a lot of points. We want to run and make it exciting. Like the time we played in Madison Square Garden where we scored 152 points, I think we had 4 or 5 people got 20 points. And so how many people play their whole college career and never get 20 points?
My guess is that your teammates, white, black, otherwise, probably came from segregated high schools. So all of a sudden you're integrated Were there any issues on the team? What was it like? What was the chemistry like on that team?
In Jacksonville at that time, it was just kind of unique. The surroundings, the community, very tense environment. There was a number of racial things that were taking place. I spoke about an incident. We were in the NC2A tournament, and we were first round, I think. And in Jacksonville, we were in hotel rooms and preparing for the first round playoffs. And I'm looking at TV, and there's rioting on television. I take a second look, and under the headlines, Jacksonville, Florida. So wow, that's our community. And I look back a couple of years earlier. I mean, we just right on the fringe where Martin Luther King had been assassinated, and Robert Kennedy was assassinated at the same time. So considering there was a tremendous amount of tension, the relationships between whites and blacks were not the best. As that reflected, kind of moving forward, back and forth, that relationship at Jacksonville University was just unique and very special. And then my teammates, coming from different environment, we were a unit. We were one.
Only one incident I remember in Jacksonville that was a little off color was when Chipper was there. He was a sophomore, and we went out to Beach Road Chicken Dinners in Jacksonville as a team. And Joe Williams was the head coach, and so we went in there and with our team. And Chipper was there, and he was black. And the manager came out and said, "Coach, we're happy to have you here, but your black pearl will have to eat in the kitchen." And Joe said, "Well, we'll all eat in the kitchen." So we went in the kitchen. And pretty soon he said, no, and they brought it back out. From then on, the word goes that they were letting minorities, Afro-Americans, eat there. Now that's just a small little incident, but overall they were pretty good to our team.
Had said Jacksonville who, ? Instead of Jacksonville you, that I guess the UCLA folks or others making fun of you guys arriving out of the middle of nowhere. And yet Nat Glover and others would talk about when you came back having lost, not only the airport was full of folks, all colors, creeds, races, cheering for you, standing shoulder to shoulder, but then also the highways.
I cannot believe how many people that was there. A terminology one of my bosses said, literally you stand head and shoulders above everybody else. So, but I was literally head and shoulders above everybody else, and it was so crowded, I could barely breathe. It was just all the oxygen was just sucked out of the air. The one area that you could really kind of point to that I think was part of galvanizing and bringing about a community that was segregated and separate. But this particular time and this moment was different. Good evening.
So Artis is obviously still head and shoulders above the rest of us. Thanks so much for having us. So I wanted to start off with just a quick question for each of them. And Coach, you talked about you were going to eat in the kitchen. You were recruiting. You had the second African-American player in the state of Florida. Did you have a sense in 1970 that you were a part of something bigger, that this was something that went beyond basketball that we'd be talking about 50 years later?
We had a sense we were doing something. We brought the first black players to JU. And after we started winning, then I realized it had an impression, a big one on the SEC. That time they had no black basketball players. And most coaches want to win. And as we all know, there are a lot of great Afro-American basketball players. If you try to win without them, you're running uphill all the time. And so I didn't realize, but after our success, I realized it had a real effect on all my friends who were assistant coaches, and they started, all of them in the Southeastern Conference started recruiting black basketball players.
Mm-hmm. And then Artis, I mean, as you mentioned in the video, it's 1970. So we're right on the heels of Dr. King's assassination, Bobby Kennedy's assassination, Tommy Smith and John Carlos in Mexico City on the podium. These were tumultuous times, and these were big issues. Did you realize that you were a piece of that and really creating something in Jacksonville and creating a community where there hadn't been one before? Did that enter into your thinking?
Good evening, first of all. Reflecting back on that particular time and the time frame, what the things was taking place in the country, in the community, Jacksonville, was pretty extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. Sure, no question. So let me then ask you this. We're going to have, coming after us will be fantastic communicators with the spoken word, with the written word, folks that are really able to use media, social media. But it seems like one of the things that you all did really well, Coach, you recruited players, legendary stories about JU having no budget, right? Smallest school to ever make a championship game, even now. And you guys had no recruiting budget, so you'd show up at homes at 8 o'clock because you couldn't afford to take the players to dinner. So you were hoping they'd already eaten. But how much of that was relationships? When we talk about integration, getting to know, reaching out to people beyond us, how much of that was one-on-one?
Well, we sold ourselves to our recruits. And we tried to make sure that they trusted us. And that's the relationship building. I sold Joe Williams before they ever met him. Joe Williams, our head coach at the time. Before they ever met him. There was a legend in their mind before they met him. So I communicated with them what a great coach he was, what a great person he was to play for. And you build up a trust with players, and that's through communications. And you have to tell them, have to be completely honest, and they have to trust you. And after you bridge that gap, then it makes it a lot easier to recruit a player. And so communications is very, very important. And when I mean communicate, I mean when I say something to someone, they not only hear what I say, but they understand what I mean. And that's communications. And today, there's so many ways to communicate. But I think we do not use personal communications as much as we should. I always like to look someone in the eye and talk to them face to face. Even though I'm on Facebook and social media, I enjoy seeing people in person. And not only, the main thing about communication, you have to listen. You don't communicate or learn anything if you're not listening. And so, if you want to be a good communicator, you have to learn to listen. Because everybody likes to talk. And so you let people talk, listen to what they say. If you don't understand, you ask them. But I think communication is so very, very important. We recruited artists in Pembroke and our other 3 black players that first year. They trusted us. They knew we'd be there for them if they had a problem.
Right. So, artists, you were quoted at the time of the national championship game. Somebody asked how you came to be at JU, right? A guy who's going to end up being a multiple ABA and NBA All-Star, one of the all-time greats. How'd you come to be at JU? And you said Coach Williams and Coach Wasdin were 2 of the first white men I ever trusted. Relationships?
That's absolutely what Coach Tom emphasized, relationships, and we were able to develop a bond. And as I spoke earlier about the fact that I was the first white individual that I developed a relationship with, and that sort of brought about an opening for me mentally and physically. And I certainly credit Coach Wasdin and Joe Williams for making that happen for me.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So in our final moments, any words of wisdom you would have either for the students or for yourself at the age of 20
Whatever.
when you were? So when you were back in 1970, any final words?
The final words that I would share with all of you is the most important thing is, that figure or that thought process. Well, we want to leave We want to leave a footprint so people will remember it, something that a contribution. Now, you look at these 19s here, I think I'm going to leave a pretty large footprint.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Coach, thank you. Artists, thank you. And there's more to come. So thank you very much for your time.
This is an incredible time in this country in terms of athletics and the power that athletes have and the platform that they have. And at the Undefeated, we do a lot of stuff around the intersections of race, sports, and culture, but specifically about what's really going on in the country in terms of race relations and a lot of what athletes are doing, what athletes are speaking out about, and what they're trying to accomplish. So we think we've got a great panel tonight, well, several great panels tonight, and we think we've got some incredible people to talk on this subject.
Yeah, I'm just excited because as part of our determining what's going on in the country, we don't need a filter. We can go to the athletes themselves through their social media, through their different platforms, and that really makes it a different times in terms of access, in terms of just being able to be privy to what they're thinking. And so I'm really looking forward to digging into that.
Yeah, we all are. So really, the next person we're about to introduce doesn't need an introduction here. He's an institution. He's one of the best track and field coaches in the country. He is one of the best in the SEC, obviously. And he's someone who's going to come out here and talk specifically about what we're talking about for the rest of the evening. Can we have a big old hand for Coach Mike Mouse Holloway? Wait a minute, hold on. As often happens, Lene corrected me. We also have to say that Coach Holloway is the first African American to be named the head coach of the Olympic team. So once again, let's give it up again.
And then we go on.
Here we go.
Good evening. And we can do better than that. All these people in here were whispering. Good evening. Thank you. Well, as he said, I'm Mike Holloway. My friends, my dear friends, and even some of my enemies lovingly call me Mouse. I'm the head track and field coach here at the University of Florida, and I'm starting my 25th year here, so I'm entrenched. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And I want to welcome everybody to tonight's town meeting. Before I get started, I want to do as I always do. I want to thank God for being the head of my life. And I also want to thank my lovely wife. I don't know where she's back there hiding video, and I'm sure there she is, for being here and supporting me. I also want to thank everybody associated with this program for thinking that I had something to say that you guys might want to hear, and I will do my best not to disappoint, I promise, okay? So today we're going to just kind of discuss the growing influence of black athletes and leaders in America and how we can use that influence to effect not just a change, but a positive change in our society. Now, as I get started today, I want everybody in the room to remember this question. What line are you in? Okay? What line are you in? So I define positive influence as words and actions to create a positive environment that create a pattern towards success. You know, obviously being a collegiate coach, success is big. As I tell my athletes all the time, trust me, I don't want you to run slow. I like my job. So I need you to run fast and jump far and throw far and all that stuff. So a positive influence, words and actions to create a positive environment and create a pathway towards success, okay? Now, here's a major problem we face, not just here in Gainesville, in the society all over the world. This world is absolutely filled with unsuccessful people with talent, okay? And you think about that. So I want you to imagine, you know, a lot of you get up on Friday morning after Thanksgiving and you go to Black Friday, right? You know how long those lines are. The problem with this line is it doesn't move. And there are people added to it every day. So ask yourself, why would you want to be in that line? There's negativity there. There's nothing positive going on. And again, the line never moves. So how do we go about creating a positive change in our society? What I like to do is I like to use with my team, with my athletes, with the young men and young women that I mentor, I use what I call my P's, okay? Pride, passion, preparation, and people. Let me say that again. Pride, passion, preparation, and people. Well, let's examine those a little bit. Let's start with pride. The way you walk, the way you talk, the way you dress. When you walk in a room and you're not dressed very well, your pants are hanging down around your ankles, we're speaking Ebonics, we're grabbing our crotch. What kind of message does that send? Now, these are the people, your future employer might be in that room. Somebody that wants to help you make a difference in your life, and you've ruined that because of your very first impression, which you can never make another first impression, okay? So understand that everything you do from the moment you walk out your house every morning is a symbol of how prideful you are and who you are, okay? Well, let's talk about passion. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm incredibly passionate about everything I do. From the moment my feet hit the floor in the morning to the moment I fall asleep at night, I am working tirelessly to get better. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you passionate about? And if that's something that can affect a positive change, not just in your life, but in everybody else's life around you. Now, we know some people that are passionate about things, okay? We don't need to discuss those things here, but those are things we don't need to be passionate about. So when you wake up every morning, and that's the first thing on your mind, and before you fall asleep at night, that's the last thing you think about, that's when you know that you're passionate about something. The next one, preparation, is the simplest thing ever. If you're failing to prepare, we're preparing to fail. We've all heard that, okay? So what's your plan? Do you have a plan? How many of you have that plan and you've taken it and you slid it in a drawer someplace, or you saved it on your computer someplace and I'm gonna get back to it and you never do? So if you're gonna take the time and make a plan, then take the time to follow it. Take the time to fight for the things that you claim you wanna do. Don't be that person, and we all know that person that says, this is my plan, and you talk to them 5 years later, and it's still their plan, right? Don't be that person. As I talk to my athletes all the time, we're gonna set realistic goals, and then we're gonna fight like crazy to get there. And then when we get there, we're gonna fight, we'll set a new goal and fight to get that one, okay? Now, the last one is people, and that one's huge, because you have to surround yourself that people are like-minded, people that think like you, people that feel like you, people that share your passion, right? At the beginning of every season, I tell my team this: if you want to be a drug dealer, go find one to hang around them. You want to be a crackhead, go find one to hang around them, and you will become them. You are absolutely the people you spend the most time with. It's just that simple. So when you talk about being successful in life and making a change in life, understand that the people you deal with on a daily basis have a great effect on who you are and how you act. That's very important, that you don't let those people pull you down. I don't do negativity and I don't do drama. The one thing I can control is my life. So I ask you to take control of yours and don't let people do those things to you. Now, let me talk to you about a second line. This is a much shorter line. It's filled with positive, hardworking people who are striving not only to better themselves, but others as well. The problem with that line is, in my mind, it's too short. So we've got to find a way to add to that line, okay? The problem with putting people in that line is that too often in life, we have been taught, we have learned to love things and use people. That's your problem. To love things and use people. So we've got to flip that. We've got to learn to love people and use things. Because I can go buy a new washer and dryer. I can't buy a new wife. I can't buy a new mother. I can't buy a new friend. Okay? I love to say, they let me out the ghetto and I'm not going back. Unless I'm going to get somebody else out. So I challenge you to go back and help those who can't help themselves. The more successful I become in life, I take every chance I get to help somebody else. Daily, it is my goal to help someone get better. So I want to challenge everybody in the room tonight to better yourselves, but also be a positive influence on everybody around you. Everybody around you. Anybody you come in contact with, when they walk away, they should be thinking, man, he or she made a great impact on me. Now let's get back to that question. Which line are you in? You're in that long, unmoving, uncaring, unmotivated line that's going absolutely nowhere, or that line that needs to be longer and needs to be filled with people that are trying to help others get better. I don't know about you, but I want to be in the short line, okay? So I asked you to start by bettering yourself, then reach back and bring someone with you. And when you bring them with you, then you challenge them to reach back and bring somebody with them. Because as you do that, that short line gets longer and longer. And then everything becomes more positive. And then every now and again, as a reminder to yourself, stop, put your feet up, and ask yourself, what line am I in? It's important. I thank you for your time, and I hope you guys really enjoy the discussions and the topics that are coming up behind me. God bless you guys and have a good night.
We're at a place in this country where athletes obviously have a very powerful platform, more so than in the past, because of social media, just because of the way things are. But when you put yourself out there, you risk a lot. And for both of you, with where we are right now in terms of activism in this country and athletics, how risky is it for people who want to say something to actually say something because of what they have to possibly lose?
Yeah, check. Can you hear me? Okay, we're gonna keep going anyway. I think for this generation, different than mine, with the social media platform, they're having the opportunity to grow their brand. But oftentimes, guys react emotionally out of impulse without stopping to think what repercussions come from my tweet, my post, my Instagram, my Snapchat. And oftentimes, because they don't understand the magnitude of posting where they have that opinion to post how they feel, sometimes it's better to get an adult or someone older or second opinion, someone that you trust, before you post it. There you go. Someone a little bit more experienced before you post. So part of my job as a player engagement director for the Jags, oftentimes guys come to me and say, MP, what do you think about this post? And to me, those are the best case scenarios because of my experience. I can say, you may want to clean that one up or don't post that one at all. And so I understand the climate in which we're in. They want to voice their opinion. But as a professional athlete, in my case, sometimes it's better not to post.
Well, I have a little bit of a different opinion. I wrote a project, a book called We Matter, Athletes and Activism, and I was able to interview a lot of athletes who were doing just that, voicing their opinions, and I love it. You know what I mean? It's like a throwback to the 60s. You know, the times of where you had, Bill Russell and John Carlos and Tommy Smith and, Dr. Harry Edwards. Right. So, but now you have LeBron James and, Carmelo Anthony and Dwayne Wade and all, Eric Reed and Kaepernick, and everybody is giving their opinions and weighing in on topics, and there's so much power in it. Especially when you talk about social media. If you look at LeBron, he has just as many followers as Trump. You know what I mean? So when he says something, everybody hears it. It's like, imagine if Muhammad Ali back in the day had a Twitter account. Like, that would be amazing, you know what I mean? And there's so much power in that. So I love this resurgence of athletes who have found their voice and are able to make change. And it's being led by the people at the top, like LeBron James. So I think it's great. And really what I want to do is really encourage younger athletes to really start using their voices and finding their voices. And of course, you have to do your research and make sure that you know exactly what you're talking about. But there's so much power in the athlete voice, and it's a beautiful time right now.
But we also know that the thing we often hear now is stay in your lane, okay? Either stay in your lane or stick to sports. And when we hear that, oftentimes it's really directed at African-American athletes. And I say that because, for example, J.J. Watt, who did a ton of incredible work around hurricane relief in Texas. And when he did that, he was lauded on social media. People talked about how great it was that he was out there, championing this cause and raising money for all these people who had lost their homes and lost all their possessions. No one was talking about, at that point, stay in your lane. So do we find that this is really a uniquely African American thing in terms of the criticism about speaking out and using your platform?
Well, I think that it's more than that. I think it's really that when people agree with you, then they applaud you. Oh, look at this athlete who is speaking out. This is wonderful. Let's put him on our program. But then when they disagree with you, like Laura Ingraham, then it's like, okay, you need to shut up and dribble. And it's funny, but when you see this recent situation that happened with the NBA in China, and you saw that the players and LeBron and everybody elected not to speak out because they didn't like the position that somebody else put them in. You know, not a position that they chose to be in, but someone else, talking about Daryl Morey's tweets. And they elected not to speak out. And then the same people who told athletes to stay in their place, to shut up and dribble, to keep politics out of sports, were now saying, well, why aren't these athletes using their platforms to speak on an issue? But it's because of an issue that they agree with. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in. No, either you can't have it both ways. Either you're going to be for athletes using their voice or you're not.
And to me, I'd agree. It's the hypocrisy that comes along with speaking your voice. And to me, that was what I tried to iterate earlier, is sometimes we have to be careful in how we present our platform without being educated and not understanding exactly how the repercussions of your tweet or your statement would affect other people. Oftentimes, you put yourself, especially if you have kids. If you tweet something out there, now your kids may get in a situation, they get slandered in elementary school, all because of a tweet. I'm all about people having their voice, but I think it should be managed in a way that is productive and positive.
One of the things about professional athletes is they have a lot of opportunities. And you know, marketing comes into it. You can get endorsement deals, be it with athletic apparel companies or soft drinks or whatever marketing we're talking about in terms of someone saying, hey, I want to partner with you to sell my brand. But when you do that, there are certain things that come along with that, like don't hurt my brand. If I'm going to give you X amount of dollars to help me push my brand, don't do things that hurt my brand. And where do you guys come down on the ability of companies that athletes partner with to really direct and lead what they do on social media?
That is a really tough question, because to me, from a perspective from the company, they have a brand to protect, like the NFL Shield, if you will. And if you have a person that's doing things in the community or in the public eye that could be deemed as not positive or not becoming of an athlete or not becoming of that brand, it can be a challenge for a company to rebound from that. So I think companies that choose to use athletes for a particular brand, be Sprite or Snickers or Skittles or whatever, should be careful in understanding what platform, get a chance to sit and talk to that player, understand what his needs are, what his thoughts are, what his social stance is on things that may be happening.
Know who he is.
That's exactly right. Know your personnel, as we talked in the green room earlier. Yeah. Sometimes you have to figure out who that person is before you just hand them a product and I want you to represent this. I think oftentimes companies just see an opportunity to grow their brand without stopping for a moment to understand the player and what stance he may have on a particular subject.
Well, I don't want to keep disagreeing, but I have to respectfully
But that's
disagree.
what this is.
Well, you know, Bill Russell said once that you're not going to reduce me to a clown that's used to entertain your circus. And he said, I am a man and I have beliefs and I have opinions and you're going to respect me for my opinions. And I thought that was so powerful because, you know, the way that athletes are going right now, they're not afraid to use their platform to voice their opinions. Example, Steph Curry is signed with Under Armour. The Under Armour president comes out and says, I want to congratulate President Trump. He's a great asset and everything like that. So Steph Curry said, well, wait a minute now. You don't speak for all of us. You know, if we're going to do that, don't do that as representing the entire brand. Do that representing yourself. And then he backtracked. Now, he had to backtrack to where Steph Curry was the lead person for Under Armour. So he made his voice being heard of his position, and then the company followed. So what you're seeing right now is athletes using their position, their brand, to be able to direct the company, not the opposite, not the other way around.
In many cases.
In many cases, but you're seeing the top athletes do it. So when you see because the athletes who have the most to stand to lose. You know, where before the thought was that if you do speak out, you could hurt your brand. So then you had somebody, you know, who would say, I'm not black, I'm OJ. Don't put me with any of that. You know what I mean? But now you're having LeBron say, no, I'm not going to go to the White House. No, I don't agree with Trump's policies. No, I don't. And he's the top athlete. So if he can say that, it's not like the brands are going away from him once he says that. So if he does that, he sets a precedent and a standard for all other athletes to follow, and then they have the courage to be able to speak out and speak on their voices without it hurting their brand.
But you know, Marcus, I think there is a difference with the NBA and the NFL.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and I've always found it very interesting in reporting and talking about this stuff on TV. The NBA has this image of being a very progressive league. And obviously, in terms of minority representation of coaches and general managers, better than the NFL. But people seem to forget that the NBA has a rule where you have to stand during the anthem. And we all know what happened the last few years with the NFL. But Marcus, do you feel that it is inherently different for NFL athletes because of the perception? I'm not getting specifically into the kneeling, I'm just saying in terms of the perception that the league is not as progressive as the NBA, that NFL athletes have to kind of navigate things a little more differently than NBA athletes do?
I think that is definitely the case. The NBA is very progressive, even in how they let them warm up with hoodies on. Well, we have in the NFL, well, we don't do that. You got to have your socks at a certain length. You got to wear your pants at a certain length. You can't wear your jersey out. And so we have all these limitations when players take the field about them showing a little bit of individuality, when the NFL is like, we don't do that here. So to me, I think a lot of times the NFL player get painted and trapped in this box. This is it. That's all you can do. That's all we want from you. Go out and make plays. We want to protect this shield. We want to protect this money machine that we have without you being a disruption. Even to like socks. You know, guys will get fined for not having their socks high enough. In the NBA, I don't even know if you have a sock rule.
No, there's no sock rule. and there's a stark difference in the NBA and the NFL. I had the pleasure of being able to interview NBA Commissioner Adam Silver in my book, We Matter. And I asked him that very question, what makes the NBA different? And you know, he talked about his appreciation for activism, for the history of activism. He talked about Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He referred to the previous All-Star weekend where he honored athletes for their activism. And you know, you don't really see that too much in the NFL from Roger Goodell. Now, this is a different NBA than the one under David Stern, because people have to remember that Mahmoud Abdul-Aruf and Craig Hodges was blackballed from the NBA under David Stern. You know, so now it comes with new management, everything is kind of different now. But the fact that Adam Silver is handling everybody and giving everybody a space to feel comfortable in speaking their voice. And I asked him specifically in my book, I said, okay, what if they speak on something that you disagree with? Because that's the caveat. Everybody can applaud somebody when they agree with them. But what if an athlete uses their platform to speak on something that you disagree with? Will you still be supportive? And he said, definitely. You know, we're a mixture of different opinions and different cultures, different ideologies and everything like that. And you just don't hear that same language from the NFLs. And also, let me just add, guaranteed contracts. That's a big difference. It's a lot easier to be vocal when you know that your contract is guaranteed. You know, in the NFL, you're kind of an employee at will. So they can come in the next day and say, you know what, you've been playing well, but we don't like your face anymore. And then you can either have to renegotiate your contract or they can cut you. The NBA doesn't have that. So that's a big difference as well.
Yeah, and you're having that job security. You do have the ability to speak out more. You have the ability to be more comfortable in the space that you want to be in. And you mentioned the fact about just how the league, in terms of being more socially active, okay, that the NBA has a better reputation for that than the NFL does. Now, the NFL would argue that what they've done around their whole social justice initiative with the Players Coalition, that they are more in that space than they used to be. But what you hear is that players who have spoken out and who have gone with the Players Coalition and sided with that group, that they get labeled as sellouts. So how do you balance that where, okay, you have these things going on and you're a player in the NFL and you want to use your platform, and a lot of these guys did by getting with the Players Coalition, but then people label them as sellouts. I mean, how do you deal with that?
It's exactly what we're talking about right now. You have to make a business decision. To me, you have to look at your personal brand, how you are financially, things that matter to you. And to me, you have to take into account all of that. And so when you have a situation where you have the social justice platform now that the league really had to get behind because of everything that was happening. It's like, okay, let's be progressive like the NBA and say, let's get in front of this. It's too late. Once the dam is burst, how do you clog it? Now you have to go way upstream now to fix it. But now at this point, with our social justice platform, it's kind of too late. Okay, what can we do now to try and solve some of the issues that we're having when our players are speaking out about it? So now let's figure out what we can do. So to me, you still have to figure out as a player, where do you stand on that? To me, you have to figure out, is this something that I'm really worth being blackballed? Is it something that I really want to put my foot out there? And if you do, be a man. Man up and say, okay, I'm all about social justice, social change, coalition. I'm all about it, but be able to stand there when those bullets start to fly. Like we talked about earlier, sometimes when those bullets start to fly, you really haven't thought through the repercussions of something that happened, especially when we talk about guaranteed contract, not having the money that you thought you had. All of that comes in, and it really matters at the end of the day.
So, I know you want to say something because you're got something to say. Just give me one second. What I was going to do is, we're running short on time, so I was going to see if anyone had any questions, because I know if I let you go, we're going to go overtime. Okay? So just by a quick show of hands, does anyone have any questions for these two gentlemen? I've got a question over here.
I have a question for Marcus. Just how have you seen the NFL evolve, the past decade regarding social issues, kind of issues that are talked about? Are they progressing in a way that you deem appropriate, or is it lacking advancement?
To me, it's like anything else. Until you get put in a situation, you have to evolve, and I think that's where we are now in the NFL climate. I think because of some of the things that we're dealing with, the Colin Kaepernick and being blackballed and ostracized of he's been a bad guy, but you can't tell me Colin Kaepernick isn't better than some of the backup quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Come on, let's be real. And so to me, once you start to figure out that dynamic and what players are interested in, you have to start progressing in that way to figure out guys who may have this platform that want to speak out against the NFL or against social justice or inequalities. How can the NFL get behind it and back it? But until the NFL had to deal with some of these matters, they didn't have a platform to really give players a vehicle to pursue those interests. But now they're creating that, which I think is commendable and definitely headed in the right direction.
Anybody else? Because I'm going to let Itai speak here, and that's going to take all the time. So does anybody else have a question? Okay, go on.
Well, I think it's difficult to really, credit the NFL's progressiveness while they have somebody blackballed. I do. When somebody who has taken a peaceful protest, in the spirit of Dr. King, of taking his protest to the mainstream, and his grievances in a peaceful way, which is what the feedback was after all of the different uprisings in different places. It's hard to really say, okay, now they're progressive, because they are supporting the Players Coalition while they have him blackballed. I think that one of the things and it's interesting in looking at the Jay-Z and NFL deal when they were sitting there at the press conference, and one of the things that Jay-Z said was that we're past kneeling, and it's not about one person getting a job. And I have to respectfully disagree with Jay-Z as well as on that, because of the fact, not of what him being blackballed represents. So it represents where it's like, okay, so if anybody else steps out of line in this fashion, they will be blackballed too. So as long as you have this person blackballed, then that's what's hanging over all of the players' heads who have non-guaranteed contracts, who are trying to get into a rhythm in their career and everything like that. So the communication, I think, from the NFL, I understand that it's a bottom line league and you don't want to do things that affect your bottom line, but if you're really going to embrace allowing your players to have the freedom to speak their mind, then you can't have somebody blackballed.
I agree and disagree with you. Okay. But again, like I said, at the end of the day, he made a big boy decision. Right. That was a decision that he made. So if he decided to step out and had a peaceful protest, when at the time there wasn't a policy in place for it, and I get that, which is key.
A lot of people don't understand. There was no policy that prohibited him from doing what he did. And look, I get, and I have this debate with people all the time, especially colleagues of mine, that we can have a discussion about how many teams he can start for, but we can't have a discussion about the fact that he's not in this league, because there are guys in this league at that position who can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Right. So I mean, that's just not a credible argument that he's not good enough to play. Now, I understand what both of you are saying, and what it really comes down to is we're never going to be able, I think, to reach a consensus on this, because on the one hand, you have the Players Coalition and the people who bought into what the NFL wanted to do there and say, okay, we can't get Cap a job, but we can do work in our communities. And then on the other hand, you have people who say, wait a minute, if Cap doesn't have a job, what does that represent overall? So I don't know if we're ever going to be able to have a meeting of the minds on this. I think everybody's going to stay dug in on their sides because Cap's not going to get a job. I mean, can we agree on that?
I agree.
Unfortunately, I do agree. And I think that's where your original question, which was what's the difference between the NFL and the NBA right now? Yeah. Because remember, I always go back to it, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf and Craig Hodges were blackballed from the NBA. Absolutely. And they never played again.
About how long ago that been compared to how long it's been for Colin Kaepernick?
Oh, definitely.
It's just a microcosm of time for Colin based on when Mahmoud had his stance. And so to me, the NFL needs time to progress. And because they're trying to do something, in my opinion, they're taking the necessary steps. Although the NBA is dealing with things that their players have been speaking out for a long time, I think because of the issues that the players are dealing with now, they're evolving. It's taking time, but I think they're making the necessary steps, in my opinion. And to me, finish with Colin Kaepernick, is it about Colin or is it about the cause? And if it's about the cause, then Colin is a sacrificial lamb for the cause. If that's the main issue, let's work on the cause. And to me, right now, the NFL is working on cause. It's not necessarily about Colin.
And we could continue this discussion all day long, okay? But apparently we are way over time. Okay. Like, seriously, I could have done this for another hour, all right? Can we get a hand for both of these gentlemen? Appreciate you, guys. I think that's it.
I am delighted for our next fireside chat to get started. The fellas had their chance, and now, you know, the ladies are going to be doing our thing. I wish we could sit closer, do a little kiki, you know, get together. But so we are talking about finding and using your influence as athletes in sports that are often less visible. We have A.J. Andrews, who's a professional softball player, an outfielder who's won the Gold Glove. She's played in Akron. She's played in Houston. She's just completed her season in Italy, and she's also a motivational speaker promoting women in athletics and young black women. So thank you. Thanks so much. And we have the shot put diva, Miss Michelle Carter, three-time Olympian, the reigning Olympic shot put champion from 2016 in Rio, the first African-American woman to ever win a gold medal.
The first American woman.
The first American woman to ever win a gold medal. Yes. In shot put. Yes. So all of that, just a lot of firsts, a lot of historic, a lot of competing in spaces that don't always get the visibility. So that's what I wanted to talk about. How are you able to cover ground? How are you able to find your leverage, find your influence, leverage it, you know, extend it? What does that even look like? As I say, particularly in sports that aren't as visible. So AJ, with you, how have you been able to find your lane?
I create my lane, honestly, because when it comes down to playing professional softball, it's definitely not a sport that gets the visibility that I would hope it would, that many women that play softball would hope it would. We don't get the recognition that Major League Baseball players get. So me being the very first woman to win a Rawlings Gold Glove, you would expect that it would get a lot more coverage than it did. But it was almost, in my opinion, felt really dismissed. The Major League Baseball players, when they win, they get an entire ESPN production. I got to have maybe a 3-minute video on YouTube to talk about me winning. And this was a historic moment, not just for softball, but for women in sports in general. Right now, young women that play softball can aspire to be a Gold Glove winner, but before 2016, that wasn't possible. And for me, when it comes down to creating my lane for influence, it is being loud about my success. And, you know, sometimes I feel like maybe I'm talking about it too much, or maybe, you know, I'm harping on it, but in reality, it is something that should be told. It's a story that should be told. And if other people aren't going to pick up that narrative, I'm going to write my own.
I love that, and I love that you're talking about being loud about your success when that carries so much stigma for women, right? To be loud as a woman, to be sort of front-facing, to be your own advocate, and to be a young African-American woman doing that as well. Tell me a little bit about how some of that works and you've been able to sort of navigate that.
I definitely think as women, when we achieve something, right, and we're given a prize, it's like, okay, be happy for that, right? We acknowledged you a little bit, go ahead and sit down and be happy for what you got. When in reality, we deserve so much more. We do just the same work, we put in the same hard work just as men, we put in those overtime hours, we put our body under distress. Anything that you want to congratulate or celebrate a man doing, we do these same exact things. And we have more pressure to be good. We have more pressure to look a certain way while we're doing these things. Men, they can just be successful athletes. We have to be successful female athletes while also looking pretty or also having this certain aesthetic in order to get the attention that we should have just gotten from our athletic ability. And so for me, it's not enough just for you to say, oh, good job, AJ. It's like, no, AJ, what you did was spectacular. You deserve to get the praise. You deserve to be that person that allows other people behind you that are now able to get the award to have a lane to get the praise that they deserve as well. And not accepting, right? Not accepting status quo. I think in order for not just softball, but women in sports in general to finally get what we deserve, we have to demand it.
And to leverage that right to get for your next. And so, Michelle, pick up on what AJ was saying with regard to you being this Olympic champion and everything that went into it. Have you seen the same kind of love come back, and how have you been able to establish yourself as this Olympic champion, as someone who has this presence, to go out there and do your thing?
I feel like the best thing to do is be yourself, because when you're authentically yourself, people notice that and people see themselves in you. So for me growing up, when I started doing the shot put in 7th grade, by the time I got to high school, when I could finally get my nails done, put on a little bit of makeup, a little lip gloss, I'm like, yes, like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And when I got to college, of course, the makeup progressed, and I was just being myself, because I was that girl who would get all dolled up, but I would also wrestle you in the playground, don't play with me. So I just always wanted to be myself. So I carried that into my sport because I couldn't deny half of who I was. When half of me is this girly girl, but I throw this heavy ball in some dirt and I'm really good at it. And so for me, kind of like when you mentioned Shot Diva, like that's my handle, that's kind of like my persona, because I am this diva, but I throw the shot put, and that's all of who I am. And I never wanted to deny a part of me. So what made me different and what made me stand out and what I realized what people were noticing about me was that in a sport, in my sport, shot put, when people think of shot put, they think of somebody named Olga. We all know who Olga looked like. And so that's what they would think about women shot putters until they saw me. They was like, oh, but you're pretty for a shot putter. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, okay, so this is a thing.
Right, I was going to say, they're like, wait, is that even a thing?
It's a thing, because, I came in high school before we had the internet, so people had to look up the results in the newspaper. And people were like, oh, so you're the girl that throws, like, you're really cute. I'm like, well, thank you. But just being yourself, and that's what I was able to do. I was able to be myself, and it freed me up. But then when I came professional, I did get the side eye from my opponents. Like, oh, so she cute. She thinks she cute. She ain't about to win. Like, she's not going to throw far. And it did make me second guess. Like, should I do this? Because they not looking like me, and I don't look like them, but they're actually doing better than me. But then I was like, no, Michelle, like, be true to who you are. What makes you happy? So me getting my hair done, getting my nails done, doing my makeup before competing, that's me getting ready for work. Right. I'm putting my best foot forward, and this is what I do to get myself ready, and it builds my confidence because I know when I step in that ring, I don't have to worry about my hair. I don't have to worry about what I look. I know what I look like. I fixed it before I left, and I'm free to be me in that moment. And I think that's what I've been able to do, and what I get the feedback from people. That's what they tell me, what they like about me, and what they've noticed about me, and that's just from me being myself.
And I love that's part of your authenticity. This is what you do to enable yourself to get in the right headspace to create, right? And so you also have the You Throw Girl. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, because if we're talking about influences and leveraging and, you know, how you affect other people, talk about this notion that you're telling other female athletes that you can do this and that. You don't have to be limited.
Yes. Because I feel like as women, we always have to choose. We only could be one thing. People don't really like to see us do more than one thing. But I have a camp called You Throw Girl Sports Confidence Camp, and it's for young female athletes from junior high to high school. And we build and pour into them to be the best they can be on and off the field. So not only do we have our sports sessions, we have self-defense class. We have goal setting and vision board. We do etiquette classes. We prepare them how to present themselves in interviews, because track and field has opened many doors for me. I started traveling the world when I was in 10th grade because I was good at throwing the shot put. And so I want these young girls to have the opportunity to experience all these different things that they may not get at school, or they may not get certain training or be exposed to it, but we expose them to them and build up their confidence and give them these skills. These skills not only work on the field, but they can take these skills off the field and build something for them that's unique just for them. Because we're going into the time where you need, like, not just one job, you need kind of multiple jobs these days, and just leverage who you are and be confident in that. And I think that's the big thing. Like, you want to be confident in who you are, no matter what field, no matter what you do, because if you don't believe in yourself, it's hard for everybody else to get on board with you.
AJ. Absolutely. When you're doing your motivational speaking, what is your message as an influencer, as someone who's standing in the gap for these underrepresented sports? What is your message to young women?
Mine is basically that you can truly be whatever it is you want to be, and to never allow barriers to keep you down, to be a barrier breaker. Because one of the main things that I like to stand on is the fact that before 2016, right, no woman could dream to be a Gold Glove winner. And from 2016 on, now that's something that people can dare to dream about. And so just the fact that whatever it is that you want to do, whether you feel like it is attainable, you still need to go for those goals. And if that door isn't opening for you, then you have to kick it down, basically. Just really work toward being exactly who you are, being authentic, being able to demand what it is that you want in this world if some man is what's keeping you from getting it.
When you talk about kicking down the door, like, how does that operationalize? What does that look like? What are some of the specific things, especially since you guys are not only competing for your now, you're trying to look forward to what your career will be, where you'll have influence after sports. So walk me through that, either of you. AJ, give me a sense of the specifics of some of those things.
Knocking down doors?
Yeah.
I would say when it comes to knocking down doors and knocking down barriers that are faced in front of you, you just have to go head on. I think every no is getting you closer to a yes, right? You can't allow that to stop you in your tracks from what you want to do. One of my favorite things is that I like to tell kids that I work with is failure is only opportunity to more intelligently begin again, right? You cannot know what it is you need to do to move forward if you do not at first fail. Failure needs to be something that you accept, that you hone in, and almost embrace, right? Me knowing that I failed this time, I know what I need to do in order to prevail ahead. And you telling me this no is only going to make me work harder to find another route to get where I want to be, right? This may have been the path that I thought would get me there, but you're only going to allow me to work harder, become smarter, learn more in order to get around that no, and you're going to be the one that's going to be forced to celebrate me once I reach my yes.
How about that? So Michelle, same question for you. How how do you represent, how do you customize, how do you do what you need to be the Olympic champion now, but also look forward to having that, that promise of that next thing you're looking forward to, incorporating your faith in it maybe? What does that look like?
I would say execute with excellence. Because when you become really good at what you do, people take notice. And if you stay consistent and you're excellent, because you can't be good one day and then you like at an A today, then the next time they see you at a C, then you at a B, and then you actually at a D minus. Like when you're out there, you're doing what you do, put forth the A+ effort every single time. And that's how you can knock down a door. Because if I never showed up for my practices consistently, if I didn't learn from the times when I did have a bad meet and try to get better from that. Like I just kept trying and kept pushing. I kept pushing myself. And that's how I was able to really break down the barriers, not just in my sport, but also in myself, in my own mind. Because I think that's the biggest barrier we have, because half the time we second guess ourselves. And when you second guess yourself, you can never break down the barrier to let other people go through if you can't break down the barrier for yourself.
Then how do people see you? Do you engage in social media? What is the primary way where somebody feels like, I can reach out and touch you? If she's doing it, I can do it. If AJ's doing it, I can do it. How do you spread that message for people that can't be person to person?
Well, yeah, definitely social media. That's the one thing we have today that you can have a message sitting here like this is going to be seen worldwide. You know, because you could just click a button and anybody can see it. So sharing that message on Instagram, one thing I do like to do after a competition, no matter how I did, I give my pros and my cons, like what happened, what was I thinking, what I need to work on for the next time, and kind of walking people what I walked through to get myself to the next level so they can see what that looks like.
And that feels like an intimacy. And you've been sort of supported in that. You said that parents have come up to you or have said things or communicated with you in social media about the inspiration that you provide.
Funny story, Corey Carter, she is a professional 800-meter runner today. And when she first went pro, the first thing she said to me, she was like, oh my gosh, Michelle Carter, we're cousins in my head because we have the same last name. And when I was growing up, when I was in middle school, my dad pointed out to you on the TV and was like, look what she's doing. And she's, she's very confident and she's a bigger brown girl and she can wear makeup and she looks like a woman, but she's also really good at what she does. Like, this is who you need to watch. And I was like, Corey, you just made me feel old because you said you was in junior high and I was already professional. But besides that, but it was like in that moment, for her that meant something, even though we weren't even in the same event. But she saw something, her parents saw something like, hey, watch her, because if you want to be great, she has some qualities about her that you can gain from. And I think that's what the main thing is, like no matter what realm of influence you have, someone's always watching you, from your siblings, the person next door, the person who always sees you walk this one way to class every single day. That's what people are watching you in your everyday things to take cues on how they should live their life.
Watching and learning. AJ, for you, how do you sort of spread that word for people that can't come out and hear your speeches? What do you do both in social media, and how do you just sort of get that notion out there, that how you walk the world?
I think being very accessible is something that I really like to do. So, social media, when people reach out to me, I try to reach out back out as much as I possibly can. Being able to I do Wisdom Wednesdays on Instagram at times, and really just kind of letting people hear what it is that allowed me to be successful, right? The things that I had to go through in order to have my breakthrough, right? The fact that you are not alone, the fact that you see success, right? I think social media can be so tricky because you're watching someone's highlight reel. You don't really get to see the hard work and the behind the scenes that they put in. I do, and I want to make sure that it's authentic, it's real, it's something that, oh, AJ, I wish I had your life. It's like, no, you need to do your life. I want to be someone that is a guide, not a goal, right? I don't want you to look at me and say, I want to be AJ Andrews. I want to get to what she's doing. I like to what she is. I'm going to use her as a guide to be the most authentic and the best me. And so whatever I can do, whether it's on social media, I like to do camps as well with kids so that I can actually have that opportunity to speak with them face to face. And just whatever it is I can say to allow them to feel like they can be the best them and really flourish as an athlete and as a person in their own life, rather looking at these people that they see on social media or on TV as that's who I want to be.
And then if I understand correctly from having spoken with you all, that sets you up for whatever you want to do next, because it's been authentic in this moment as you're going through the journey, as you're the professional athlete with the spotlight on it. So then it's more of a bridge instead of just a leap into this next thing, right?
Yeah, I would say winning the gold in 2016 definitely opened up many doors for me. I was having speaking engagements and being invited to all kinds of places that I didn't even know existed. But it was just an amazing opportunity, that something that I worked hard for, and was being my very best, and opened so many doors and allowed me to not just make my life better, but to encourage others.
Right. Which is exactly what influence is. And so, thank you, ladies. This has just been inspirational, even for me too. The little makeup, shot put, gold glove, all of it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Siegel is an entrepreneur. He's a business executive in the entertainment and sport management fields. Most recently, and perhaps most notably, he's the Chief Executive Officer of USA Track and Field. He is also the owner of several companies, including Revolution Racing, which is a NASCAR team that partners with NASCAR in their Drive for Diversity program. So, please put your hands together for Max. And welcome to the University of Florida.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Of course. So you heard this introduction, and you've heard a lot more laudatory introductions about your accomplishments in your career. The many things that you've been able to achieve. You're clearly one of the most visible and one of the most accomplished African-American businessmen and executives in motorsports, not to mention your accomplishments of running USA Track and Field, achieving massive business success there, really focusing on the bottom line, the very famous $500 million contract with Nike. Given all these accomplishments, how do you link that back to the childhood, which in your telling of it was clearly a tough upbringing? The words that I've heard you use are chaos, drugs, and violence. Coming from that beginning with almost nothing to work with and achieving what you've achieved, how did you do it?
Wow. I talked about it a little bit today. Someone was asking me about goal setting, and I heard Coach Holloway. First of all, my faith is really important to me, and has been the foundation for everything that I've done. My parents didn't go to college. They divorced early. A lot of drugs and alcohol in my house. And when I thought about what a better life was for myself, they were small goals. I didn't really know. I just wanted a stable household or a comfortable environment emotionally. I had a younger sister who I looked after, and so, I always said to myself, I want to do better so I can take care of her, and if I do this, and if I get the platform, I want to make sure that everything that I do makes it better for someone else, and they don't have to experience the same kind of chaos and confusion that I did. So for me, it started off just trying to have a better life.
Yeah, well, I suspect that a lot of people want to have a better life, and they think to themselves, I'm going to have a better life. But that's not to say that they necessarily succeed at that. Do you think that you had a particular strategy or a particular viewpoint or philosophy that might have helped?
Well, for me, the two things that gave me an excuse to not go home were sports and school. And so I knew from an early age that if I achieved in school, I'd have opportunities. Sports changed my life. It taught me a lot of things that I carry in the business right now. It gave me an opportunity to get noticed by colleges and academically. And so, I did two things. One was setting those kind of personal goals that I became a better version of myself, whatever that meant. But I had so many negative influences in my life. I tried to set objective goals where someone's opinion of me really didn't define who I was. So whether it was achieving a B+ or an A or saving $50 in the bank, I tried to set those kind of metrics in my life to say, okay, you're on the right path and you're doing a great job. Fortunately for me, my wrestling coach was a huge influence early on. My baseball coach was a huge influence. And then, neighbors and friends, and we talk about having mentors, and so many mentors may be your peers, people who really invest in you and believe in you and support you. So those were the things, and really, I think early on I decided that I was going to have to accept people for who they are and where they are in their life, and I tried to pull like the positive qualities. So if I saw someone, my stepmother, for instance, who was abusive with alcohol, but she got up every day at 4 o'clock to go to work. I mean, that work ethic was something that I tried to pull out of that situation, and just let the rest of it go.
So I think I've heard you talk in the past about the importance of collaboration in your success and the insistence or the commitment you have to a positive attitude and wanting to work with people with positive attitudes. Do you think that those principles, I think I heard those principles in what you were just saying.
Yeah, we talk a lot in a formal way about diversity and equity and inclusion. And if you just take a look at where we are in the world right now, we have a global economy. The internet connects all of us. So as a human being and as a business person, it's foolish in my idea to not embrace all the rich things that people bring to the table. And I realized early on that you don't achieve anything significant or any success on your own. It does take collaboration. And so for me, as I ran into people, and I still do, that have their own agenda, which there's nothing wrong with that, I found that if you truly care about what's in it for someone else or what they're trying to achieve, then they'll invest in you. When I was young and I had my first job out of college, I had a boss, I had great experience, and I had a boss that I really had a hard time adjusting to. And, my mother, who was wise, told me to kind of understand that she was a human being and there were other things that were going on. And I found out during the course of that, I was thinking it was all me, but her father had terminal cancer. And there were things going on in her life which taught me that when you go to work every day, it's not just someone with a task, there's a human being that you're working with that have other issues. So, what I try to do, in addition to my job and leading, is being a good servant and supporting people and understanding not only what their mission was from a corporate standpoint, but how can I enrich their life on a personal level as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Could I shift the conversation just a little bit, because I want to come back to something you mentioned in that last answer. You mentioned the concepts of social justice and equity and inclusion. And as a race fan, I knew you first through your ownership of Revolution Racing and the work that NASCAR is doing. Do you see the drive for diversity as, how is it linked to this whole social justice concept? And do you think it's being effective? Is it accomplishing what NASCAR and you hope it will?
So I often say people wonder what a black guy with a Jewish name is doing in NASCAR. And the fact of the matter, I'm a recovering lawyer. And early in my career, I represented one of the greatest football players ever, the late Reggie White, Reverend Reggie White, who's in the Hall of Fame. And so I was Reggie's agent, and Reggie retired down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was on the global management team at Sony, and he called me and said, hey, he's like, there is a great opportunity. There are so many opportunities for women and people of color in NASCAR. And I'm like, you've lost your mind. There are no opportunities for women and people of color in NASCAR. But Reggie kept after me, and he became friendly with Joe Gibbs while he was down there. And he saw all those positive things that sport brings. It's a family sport. It's fascinating. People are passionate, and all the opportunities. Then he looked around and said, hey, you know what? I don't think people like us understand that you can be a crew member or a race engineer or an executive. It's not just about being a race car driver or a marketer. So we put together a group, and Eddie DeBartolo, who was recruiting Reggie, said, if Reggie ever wants to have life after football, call me. So we called, and we put together Ronnie Lott, myself, Reggie White, and we were going to buy a race team. And unfortunately, we lost Reggie on Christmas. He passed away. In the course of the meetings with all the team owners, I became more fascinated. I stayed in New York for about a year, and then Teresa Earnhardt called, and I think was intrigued by the entertainment background, managing all the intellectual property rights for Dale Jr. and Dale Sr., and working on film. So I was given the opportunity to be the president I believe I was the first person of color in the history of that company with 600 employees. And so, you know, for me it was interesting because where we found a common ground was around the passion for sport. And then you start to talk about those things, family and what makes you happy, and you learn. So in the course of that, I noticed that Brian France and Steve Phelps and NASCAR, they were really looking to grow the fan base. And for me, I think that people were either skeptical of the focus or the commitment or the reason. And it evolved out of not just being socially correct or proper or the right thing to do to the business dictated as the culture change in the fan base and trying to go younger in pop culture. And so this has been my 12th year partnering with them. I'm proud of the fact that three of our most popular young drivers in the series, Kyle Larson, Daniel Suarez, and Bubba Wallace, all drove for me, and we developed them. And 12 years ago, I think there were 2 pit crew members who go over the wall and work on the cars that were minority. We've placed over 50 at all different levels in the National Touring Series, and we've had our first historic women that are tire changers at the top level. So I can't really say enough about NASCAR's commitment and focus and the resources that they put into that. But the reality of the situation is it's a work in progress, you know, and the fact of the matter is I have partners that realize there's a lot of work to do. So it is being effective, but we have a lot more to do.
Do you feel like you're seeing it in the fan base? Are you seeing more fans of minority extraction or women fans for that matter?
I'm seeing more, but not at a level where I would claim that we have had success. I think that part of the challenge with NASCAR is because of the stereotypical perspective that people have of the origin or what they think about the sport is the hugest barrier for someone to even go try it. So, you know, we've tried to invite, I can tell you that I haven't had one person that I brought to a race in 12 years that hasn't walked away saying this is fascinating or I didn't really know. And the experience that they have when they get there is nothing like they imagined. So at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference, I asked the media, I said, look, I'd like to invite you guys to come out and cover it and really get the experience and tell the stories that say to people like us that it's okay to experience and experiment with this. So I think once we break down those barriers and more people are able to engage with it, the fan base will grow.
Yeah, it's a terrific story. It's really encouraging. And I got to tell you, it sets me up for another question. If we go just next door to your role in USA Track and Field, you mentioned the issue of media in your last answer, and there have been conversations around sport organizations and social justice platforms. And I know that while on the one hand you're very famous for the work you've done in getting the association on a level footing financially, but you also have a reputation for caring about the athletes and being close to them. Sorry, long setup. Here's the question. Do you feel like the athletes in the USA Track and Field organization, do you feel like their brand management and their relationship with the media is a productive thing that is benefiting them? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, probably. So when I got out of law school many years ago, I worked for a firm and we represented.
So just FYI, this guy went to Notre Dame Law School and he was the first African American to graduate from Notre Dame Law School with honors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. As my mother says, that and a quarter will get you a phone call or whatever. But anyway, I think that what frustrated me early in my career is the Olympic movement and the Olympic platform during the time the Olympics are on is the biggest globally. And there's so many things that happen in that space from, you know, the pride, the competition, the inspiration, and track and field especially, you know, anchored the Summer Olympics. So the athletes would make, you know, incredible athletes, the best in the world, all these medals. And as a federation and as a business, we had a lot of work to do to get the kind of global respect. I think that one of the things that we continue to work on, and we're chipping away at it, but we're not close to where we need to be, is really helping develop the awareness and the brand recognition of our athletes domestically. You know, my chief operating officer, Renee Washington, who was here, and I and our team, we fly around the world. And the kind of respect that we get globally and the reverence that our athletes have is amazing. And then many come home, some of the greatest athletes in the world, and it's off years and people don't even recognize who they are. And so for us, part of what we want to do with producing content and lifestyle shows and placing them in things that keep them in front of our audience in off-Olympic years are ways that we're trying to develop the brands domestically. So I think that they do not get the recognition that they deserve. And if it's the last thing I do, we're going to continue to fight to change it.
If anybody can do it, Max, I think you're the one. I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
This is the first time, I believe, if I'm correct, that the round table has made a road trip. So this is actually the road trip round table. So we're debuting it here. Michelle and Eton are back, and we have added one person, my man Cameron Wolf, who covers the Miami Dolphins for ESPN.com. Can we give it up for Cam? Now, during the time when I stepped off stage, I got my phone handed to me, and I found out that Colin Kaepernick, after I said he wasn't going to get a job, is getting workouts now. And all the NFL teams are going to go to Atlanta to go check him work out. And it just got me thinking, okay, if Cap is getting workouts, what do we feel about that in terms of where we're talking about this space, about social justice? Does this mean something positive that he's getting workouts?
Well, if I was the NFL, I would have done this a long time ago, just to make it go away. To be honest with you, I don't really understand why they would wait this long to be able to do it because of what it symbolizes. And going back to when you put somebody out there and say, okay, if any of you step out of line, this too will happen to you, and they know that that's what it symbolizes. Okay, and they leave that out there hanging. That's the message that it sends to all NFL teams, and that you can't deny that. But I mean, the fact that he's getting a workout, I think that's great news. So we'll see what happens.
I just hope it isn't a PR move.
Right.
I think when you look at what NFL teams ultimately have the decision to make, I'm eager to see how many teams show up, how many teams actually legitimately get an opportunity, or do they use this as a cover to say, hey, we watched him work out, he isn't good anymore, we're done with it. So I hope they legitimately give him a chance rather than just use it as an excuse to say that's the reason why he's not in the league.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity because they could easily just leave it alone, like we're going to let this die, we're not going to bother him, we don't want to bring up any more issues. But the fact that they are opening the door to him and going to go check him out is a great thing. I do think, like you said, it's too late. It's long overdue. It should have been done a long time ago, especially if they say they're on board with the movement, they want to help improve, support the cause, especially with the NFL being mostly black. That should have been done a long time ago.
So what do we feel about the role of the media in terms of this social justice movement? Eton, we know that the media has had to cover this because it's a massive national story. It has been for several years in terms of the new civil rights movement in sports. We know what happened in the 60s, but I'm talking about specifically the last few years. Is the media supposed to be a partner, or is the media just, in your opinion, just supposed to chronicle what's happening?
I think the media has a responsibility to accurately report what happens, and I don't think they did that with the Colin Kaepernick situation. I think that Colin Kaepernick specifically said why he was kneeling. He said it was for systemic racism, police brutality, and the political system. He said specifically, it is not about the veterans. He said, no disrespect to the veterans. He said, I have family members that are veterans. This is not about the veterans. And as soon as he did that, the next day, the media wrote, well, Colin Kaepernick has protested the anthem and is disrespectful to the veterans. I feel the mainstream media did do that, and then you saw the message kind of get hijacked purposely, by President Trump, and he said, well, he's against our veterans and he's against our military and he's disrespectful to the national anthem, and Colin Kaepernick specifically said what it was. So I think that the media has a responsibility to be able to see the way that the message was trying to be twisted, and in reference to exactly what Colin Kaepernick said was the reason why he was taking the knee. And I just don't think that the media did that.
I think, well, I saw the other day, being pro-black doesn't mean you're against everybody else.
Right.
And I think sometimes people do take that. If you say, I'm pro this, I'm fighting for this, that means forget everybody else. It was like, no, we do have a specific issue at hand that we want to highlight, but it's not against anybody else. And some people just took that and ran with it. Well, he's against me because he did this, and especially when someone else give out misinformation, they can take it and run with it. But I just like, it's like one of those deflecting moments. Let's not deal with this. Let's deflect it to something else and see what happens.
Okay, so let me tee you up though, okay? So like we are both reporters, okay? And I know that because I know what he does in his space with work and I know what I do, we both have been very thoughtful and tried to be very accurate in portraying what was going on with this. But what do you, Cam, how do you feel about the argument? And I understand what Etan's saying. There are a lot of people who do what we do who did not frame it in the accurate way.
I think that it's a diversity issue. I think that a lot of reporters honestly didn't know what was going on, and they didn't know how to term it. I had reporters that didn't look like me, that looked like a lot of the people who were in media rooms, who used that anthem protest phrase that became the mainstream thing that everybody picked up on. And nobody understood that police brutality, social injustice were the topics that they were trying to push. So when you see that coming across your SportsCenter feed, anthem protest, that's what everybody's going to chew up. Why are they protesting the anthem? Why are they going against America? And that became, we never got rid of that. Like even to this day, there are still people who think that Colin Kaepernick is protesting the anthem. And you know, like you mentioned earlier, you can be against something that's injustice, but not be against a particular group. You know, police brutality. We should all be against police brutality. Like nobody should want police brutality. Police officers should be against police brutality, but because that phrase came out, a lot of police officers were withdrawn, and they were like, that means he's against us. And you saw police officers saying, hey, we're not gonna be security on teams because Colin Kaepernick's against us, and he never said that. So I think a lot of it came in framing, and a lot of people feeling defensive because they felt like they were attacked when the message was misconstrued. So yeah, I agree that there needed to be better framing, and there needed to be better diversity. There needed to be more African American people in newsrooms to be able to say, okay, this is why he's doing it. These are the experiences. This is actually happening. Black people are being killed, and he's trying to use his voice to make an impact in this community. And it has nothing to do with the flag. He's just using this as a vehicle to show his protest. And by the outrage we all saw, it was an effective vehicle. We just didn't see it used in the way that he intended to be.
Do you have well, you want to say something? I can tell.
So
okay.
it's hard for me to give the pass that, you know, that we didn't know any better and we need more diversity in the room. It's not always a diverse face that will get the right message, number one. I think we need to take ownership of the media doing lazy journalism, whether they look like us or whether they don't look like us. And for Kaepernick to specifically list the reasons why he was kneeling, right? The reason why he was protesting. He specifically said it, then for a journalist to say, well, I don't know why he said it, so I'm just going to go with what Trump said, and Trump said that it was against the anthem, and it said that he was against the military. I think that's lazy journalism. I do
think what he said makes a difference, because people who haven't experienced some of the things that we experienced don't get it. They don't think it's as big of a deal as it is. So having someone in that room that could possibly, we're not going to say every black person could break it down, but having the person that can break down to plain language so someone can understand what's going on and what's happening, why this particular group is feeling this way, makes a difference. But if no one says anything and fight for that right in that media room, and it could be anybody, you're correct on that, but having someone that can really relate makes a major difference on how we can get that message out and not have it like one against the other. We're like, we just want you to hear us, understand us, knowing that this is a reality for us. And we do have these fears, and these things do happen, and you see it. And we just want you to understand it so we can make a solution for it.
And on that note, I know. And on that note, we have to end the first roundtable, but I'd like you to please give it up for Michelle, Cam, and Etan. Thank you very much for doing this. We could do this all night, but we got to keep it moving. So thank you. All right? Thank you. All right. Appreciate it.
Here we are at the final panel of the evening, the Undefeated Roundtable, and our Generation Next. I get to be your favorite auntie up here with the young people. And guys, we are going to talk about what it means to be doing athletics now, to be media, to be athletes, to take into account everything we've heard in terms of the influence and the platforms, and then to future cast a little bit. You know, Alana Thames, you are a communications major, you're a journalist, you're an intern, a sports intern at the Miami Herald. Cameron Hall is a soccer player, a freshman soccer player. You're interested in social justice, women and gender equality issues. And of course we have Grant Holloway, our newly minted world champion in the 110-meter hurdles. So congratulations. Heading off to the Olympics. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. What, Alanis, I'll start with you. What is it that you think media should be doing in this moment when you're talking about trying to tell authentic stories? What does that look like as someone who's a practitioner, who's, you know, out in the field and then looking forward to a career?
For me as a member of the media, I think it's important to, especially in our climate, to sort of weigh every side and to understand that things that athletes and different people are talking about, these are things that they're very impassioned about, and sometimes it's hard to sort of separate yourself from the things that you're talking about, but that's pretty much the biggest thing that media members have to remember, is to sort of separate yourself from the emotions of some pretty tough subjects that are being brought to the forefront of our nation. And like you mentioned, just stay authentic, tell the truth, tell the story of the athlete that you're covering, or, you know, when you're going into a community and covering different things, just be authentic and understand that there's always going to be more than one side to a story, and it's important for us as members of the media to try to address as many of those sides as possible.
So Cameron, for you, what do you see as the opportunities for engagement in your sport?
I think as a white woman in this country, I'm never going to know what it is like to be a part of the Black community in the United States. But what I can do is be as empathetic as possible, as compassionate, incite myself, and encourage and walk with those people and not be quiet about things that matter. So for me, it's using my social media platform and using the platform that soccer gives me to speak out about things that matter.
You were talking about being very influenced, for instance, by Megan Rapinoe, the World Cup soccer champion that was very outspoken about parity and issues in soccer. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what kind of influence that had on you in terms of how you see yourself and you center yourself in this dialogue.
Right. I think just seeing what she did in the most recent World Cup was amazing. She spoke out on things that truly mattered within the United States, and it was recognized. But I think for us, it's important to learn about those things and be insightful about those so that we can reproduce that in our social media, because obviously we have different followers and different following from young guys, young girls. And so it's encouraging to see, you know, the young boys, the young women, the older people dressing up as her in like the last Halloween that we had. It's just really encouraging because, you know, what she's speaking about is now coming to light and really pushing to the forefront.
Right. And so, Mr. Holloway, you are headed into a season where if you thought you got a lot of attention before, you know, you will not be able to outrun this attention, right? Tell me what you are trying to do in terms of your engagement, in terms of seeing opportunities with media and what that means, and in terms of what it is that you're trying to put forth in your sports and your personal walk.
Right, so it's real simple for me. I'm a very outgoing, easy-spoken guy, but the biggest thing is just a lot of people from past interviews and the past sessions that we have, they always talked about their faith. And, you know, going forward, having my faith has been a strong keynote in everything that I do. So my biggest thing is just being a vessel to everybody else. You know, when someone is with me for 5-10 minutes, maybe even they just see me in their presence, my goal as an individual is to make sure that you are happy. And can I get one of those too, boss? I'm sorry about that. My goal is to make sure, when you're in my presence, is you forget about any bad thoughts or anything that's going wrong in your life. And so, just with social media and everything, it's been known, and I've told mostly a good amount of my friends that I really don't run my social media. I think social media, it could be interpreted in different ways. Mostly, I just run my Twitter, and Twitter are my views and my thoughts only. I see a lot of funny videos, and it's, I can say what I want about those, but like mostly with social media, I try to stay away from it just because it has a negative connotation sometimes. So, my goal going forward in the future is to figure out, all right, how can I connect with you or fans or other coaches or other athletes in a way that doesn't use Instagram, that doesn't use Twitter, that doesn't use Facebook, MySpace, AOL, I don't know, whatever social media platform that's out there. How am I able to reach out to other athletes and still get my point across?
Well, and let's talk about that because you also just turned pro.
Correct.
And so you're a brand ambassador. And so how does that work? How does that operationalize? And you speak often of your faith and just wanting to be this guy, this dude that spreads joy. Certainly people get joy watching you run faster and do it better than any collegiate in history. So how do you square up those competing sort of demands?
You can't really answer that question without kind of like going on the outside of it. So like when you ask me that question, it's like, all right, how do I escape it? Like you said, there's no escaping it. That's just who I am. That's just the sport. That's the demand of what I have to do. But going forward is, all right, how can I set a new norm for the athletes after my generation? All right. So like we're here now. How can I make sure they get a little kickstart, a little head start going forward? That's the job of our generation. That's the job that I'm pushing on myself. Like I'm going to take it and be the leader. All right, but how can I make sure that the next generations and the next generations live a better life than I did?
Right. And as the auntie, I'll be the one to co-sign and be like, yeah, get off the little social media or whatever. Cameron, we talked about this. You all are digital natives, and so you're in your sport and you're talking about the influence, for instance, that you had watching the World Cup, the Women's World Cup soccer championship. How did that operationalize in terms of the ways that you interacted with people on social media? How did you, sort of find your lane in that and figure out, well, I want to say this, I want to rebut that. How did you engage?
Right. At the end of the day, Generation Z is not going to get their information from the newspaper or magazines. They're going to get it from scrolling through Twitter or Instagram. So I think that our priority as athletes, especially with the platform that we do, is making sure that we're speaking on topics that matter. Because if we learn about those things and we have information about those and we speak about them, then obviously, we're going to reach to those younger people.
Right. But now, Alanis, interrogate that because you're a journalist, right? And so if people your age are getting their information from social media as their primary source, then how do you get the word out like all sources ain't equal, right? My boy got a website.com is not the same as the Miami Herald. So how do you how do you educate? How do you stay relevant in that kind of media ecosystem and still do the kind of reporting and tell the stories that you were talking about?
You meet the readers where they are. You go on Twitter, you social out your stories, you tell the story via social media as well as through whatever medium you work for. And sometimes it means doing a little more work, but that's just how it is. And people who are really dedicated to telling stories and to getting messages out wouldn't mind going the extra mile if that means more people are understanding the stories that we're telling.
The ways that I've come to think of it as someone who came up through newspapers is that you have to master the conventions of the form. This is the new form, right? And so you have to be educated and relevant in that form because that's going to be the one, like you said, where people are primarily getting all of their news. I'm going to ask you now to future cast a little bit, right? And so what is it looking forward that you would like to see yourself do as a sports journalist, as a media person, journalist, you know, in this kind of space where there's all this opportunity, but also all this peril?
Moving forward, I would say just to continue to be a connection between athletes who are finding their voices in their different spaces and who are understanding the importance of their voices, to continue to be a liaison between them and the people who they want their messages to reach. There are a lot of athletes who are now understanding that it's important to use, like Grant was saying, use their social media to connect with other athletes, or use their social media to connect with people who look up to them or who want to one day be like them, who want to one day be in the position to be able to inspire someone else. So it's my job, and it's always going to be my job as a member of the media, to be that connection, be a medium between people who aren't accessible to the regular person, and to allow them to see that.
So when you say be a connection, that means mining these social media accounts and sometimes translating, right?
Yeah.
Because there are people who are not going to know what they're looking at. And so do you see your role as being that kind of translator?
Yeah, of course. And like I was saying earlier, just to tell it, and sometimes when athletes take to social media, it's sometimes very fiery. They're very passionate about what they're saying. It's sort of my job to, in a more level-headed way, explain or give the report so that it's understood by the masses.
Cameron, same question. If you were to future cast, you have a number of years left playing soccer and you know, also engaging around some of these issues. If you were to future cast, what does that look like as you move forward in your sports career, and then as you're looking, as you're a consumer of media, and then in terms of tweeting things out, you know, also to an extent a producer?
I think it's very exciting. I think the future, especially for women, is really bright. Seeing that the Australian women are just now getting equal pay to the men, I think that's exciting. And I think being a part of this generation that's pushing that movement is very exciting. And just being able to speak on those things and being able to play a sport where we know that, you know, there's more things coming in the future and what we're doing is being seen. And I think that's just...
So when you say being able to speak on those things, so for instance, not going to myboysgotawebsite.com, but really kind of educating yourself, how do you spread that word? Because all information is not equal.
Right.
I think that's the big challenge, especially in an environment where there can be disinformation.
I think it's using all your resources, looking at all the angles of the problem, and then creating your opinion off of that. I think that obviously there are very skewed opinions out there, and sometimes, like she said, the athletes do come on fiery, but I think with using information that you go in and try and find, and you find yourself, that it's easier to become or have a more level-headed opinion off of that.
And so, Grant, if you were to future cast, I don't know how far you want to go. Have you already won the Olympics, or? But looking forward, you know, how do you do that representation of your authentic self on this platform that parts of you can get down with, but parts of you, you know, sort of stay away from? What is your you know, sort of future self with that kind of engagement and opportunities?
I think the opportunities are endless going into the future. I think us as a generation, my generation is moving forward and setting a new norm. I think that will be kind of I think that will kind of be the starting point. And then I think, you know, like they say, most athletes are passionate about what they do. I know I'm passionate about what I do, but I think the biggest rule is, you know, going forward for reporters doing interviews on athletes, or athletes asking to be interviewed, is just to know, you know the position that they're in, know what's happening in their life. You know, you're only spending 5 minutes with them throughout the day, not the whole 24 hours, so you don't exactly see everything that's going on in their life. But, you know, just to kickstart it, I think the biggest thing is just, you know, being passionate about what you do. And I know most people say, I have a way of my words, and I love to speak, and I love to communicate with people. So, like, the biggest thing is, like, when you talk to me, you know you're going to get nothing but the truth and all the truth. But I think where some people, you know, go wrong is, oh, Grant talks too much, or Grant is too passionate about track. I think they say all Grant knows is track. So, you know, going forward, it's just, you know, having reporters know who they're dealing with and what they're dealing with, and then going forward is just, having everybody be on the same playing field.
But you're also a young person, and so that too passionate, that, all of that, some of that just comes with the territory. And of course, with social media, you put something out and it, sort of stays with you. Are you all mindful of that kind of, not even just responsibility, it is that when you make a mistake in public, that unlike previous generations, like you can't dig up some old papers, whereas, you could.
Personally, I do think it's unfair just because, I could do something that a normal person could do on this campus and I'm plastered on the front page of the news versus someone who did the same thing a week ago and he's nowhere to be found. Like, it's just swept under the table. But the rule is that everybody says the media is like a war zone. Whatever they can get their hands on, they will love to put it out there and publish it, just to get paid. I think the recent article that I just read is someone said Dan Mullen's wife was sexually harassing the football team just for showing love before football games. And me personally, I think that dude was just trying to get paid. I think he had to put out one more paper just to, meet the ends just to get paid. And I think the article was complete BS. But in my opinion, that's what people have to do in order, with this day and age of media and everything going forward. I think if they put out something just so they can get money in their pocket, I think they'll do it. And like I said, it's unfair. I can do one thing, but then someone else could do the same thing, but I'm plastered on the news.
Alanis, that's what you're going to be up against, right? Because it's a consider the source kind of thing. So we all get tainted. I can't tell you how much side eye I get, I have to talk fast and really, sort of try to make myself known. But like, when you are entering into these spaces, there are people who are distrustful because of the very thing that Grant was talking about. How do you combat that while still maximizing, right? You're a reporter. You do want to tell a story. You want it to be revealing. We would like to get paid. Like, I don't think there's anything, but not exploitative, not inauthentic, not sort of wrong and harmful. How do you navigate that space in terms of how you're looking to the future?
Just understanding my personal role. I can't control what other journalists do or how they, seek stories or whatever. But if you are truly passionate about storytelling and being someone who tells stories about athletes who are sometimes misunderstood, and sometimes the only other option is to go to them and talk to them and understand their side so that people can see a different side of them. I think if I continue to understand that is my role, not sometimes it can be sort of a popularity contest, but understanding that I need to stay true to my job as a journalist, and that's to inform people, it's not always to incite, a rage out of people. My passion has always been just simply understanding athletes and telling stories to people who don't know them in that way.
Right, and all follows, all attention is not the same, right? So you get to choose, you get to center yourself in a place that you want to be journalistically. And don't you also, Cameron, get to make judgments and actively rebut things that you're seeing that that don't sync with what you've learned and what you understood? Like, what is the role in terms of also correcting some records real quick?
Right. I think with success comes a lot of responsibility. So I think knowing that if you are successful, you have eyes on you, but I also think you have a voice too. So I think that there's opportunity to stand up against false accusations or something that you don't agree with in a respectful way, because I think everyone has the right to say, what they feel.
Right, and the forum will have to get better, because as that becomes especially people's primary, format, it's going to have to get better. It's going to have to evolve. I think we'd like to do another roundtable first, which is take questions from the audience.
It's the best time.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that. Grant might have some questions for you all, But do you have any questions for Alanis, for Cameron, for Grant? Anyone? Can you stand up, please? Thank you.
feel like you have been minimizing your freedom of speech as being a college athlete and what you're allowed to post and like forth on from there?
Oh, I love that. That's a filter question.
Ladies first.
Okay. Personally, no. I think my coaches do a good job of allowing us to express ourselves the way we want to, and I think I can feel free to voice whatever I feel or believe.
Now, I take a complete different standpoint. I love Becky so much, but with me, if I'm gonna put something out there, I'm gonna say it. And I have posted plenty of stuff where it can be like, what is Grant posting? Like, I have posted plenty of stuff, but I feel like I have a social media for me, not for the University of Florida, not for Gators track and field, not for USATF. It's for me and my purposes only. So if you think something shouldn't be on my Instagram or my Twitter, all right, that's your opinion, but too bad it's my account.
Well, that really kind of syncs with this whole conversation about the NCAA. Y'all really like that one. That really syncs with this whole conversation about the NCAA and control, right? And, you know, sort of, Alanis, where do you see that coming down? Because, you know, the genie is out of the bottle, right? We're not going back to the days where athletes, you know, sit there, you can't have any access to them. They won't communicate, they won't try to get their message out. How do you see that increasing in the future? What is your sort of perception of how that plays out now and in the future?
I definitely see athletes using their voices more, using their Twitter, Instagram accounts more, understanding that they are brands and they control their brand, and it's definitely moving in that direction, and they're not afraid to control their own narratives and to understand their worth and understand that they have power as athletes, whether it's a student athlete, whether it's a professional athlete, and we're seeing that now moving in that direction more and more.
We have time for one more question from the floor. Can you stand up, please?
Sure. So for Grant, I guess my question is, so you touched a little bit about how you kind of prefer sometimes to engage personally through like community events,
Correct.
not necessarily over Instagram. Do you ever kind of feel capped that people don't see that, you know, that version of you because it's not necessarily on a social media platform? Do you ever struggle with that?
I wouldn't say I necessarily struggle with it, but I feel like I can't touch everybody at once. Like it's hard to reach out to everybody. So like kind of what I do is like whenever I go to, you know, events, I mean, for example, last week, Professor Sparker let me come to his class, and it was awesome. Like I had some of the students ask me questions, and then I was able to do a giveaway, and I had some leftover gear. I was able to give away some of the gear to students. And I just think like wherever I'm at, it's a chance to, you know, to give, you know, and that's the thing. Like if you send me a message, I might not get to it for 2-3 weeks, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to try to, you know, give it as much time, attention, affection like I do anybody else, because it's hard to catch me, not in the running standpoint. but it is hard to, you know, get in contact with me when I know personally I do not get on social media like that. I don't run my social media account. I only run Twitter, and then most of the time on Twitter I'm only watching funny videos. Like it's hard to, you know, catch up with me in a sense, but like when I'm able to, see the message that someone sent, even though it's from August, all right, I'm able to reach out, send it. All right, you want a shirt? Okay, I can easily sign a shirt, send it to you, bada bing, bada boom. Bless life, less like that.
It's so funny listening to you all talk, because the concerns and the, you know, the things facing Generation Z are just like the generations before you, and it's balance. It's balance, it's authenticity, it's access, it's how much of yourself to sort of reveal. So anyway, please join me thanking our Generation Z panel.
We thank you for being here. We are so indebted to the Undefeated, to the talent and the organization they brought. It was a fantastic night. Unlike you, you're going off to do this 6 more times in the next 3 days. This, for us, is a very unique experience. So thank you so much for making it happen.